Hello and welcome to Get Yourself Optimized. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and today I'm very excited to have Philipp Samor von Holtzendorff-Fehling on to this podcast. And Philipp is a coach, conscious entrepreneur, alpha chi teacher, and energy healer. In parallel to a successful international business career, he constantly worked through blockages and barriers that prevented him from truly connecting with his true self. With that, he started to also see energy fields and developed his unique skills as a healer. During his business career, he worked as an executive for several well-known companies, including T-Mobile International and T-Mobile US, where he served as vice president. Philipp, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. Glad to be here.
So we met at the Biohacking conference last month. It was Dave Asprey's conference, and I was really impressed with the technology that you guys had, and I had heard really good things. A friend of mine, Luke Story, has said nice things about your technology, and I know you have a nice testimonial from Dave Asprey. So, anyways, I just felt this calling, this intuition that said, buy this thing. It was not inexpensive either. So I bought the Infinity Bloc, which actually I have right here. For those of you watching on video, you'll see that I'm holding it in my hands. This is a couple $1,000. And what it does is astounding, and I feel it. I really feel it. I've charged jewelry in it, all sorts of stuff. And when you put something on that's been in that, you definitely feel it. So anyways, we got to talk about what is this Infinity Bloc? What's the quantum block? How did you even come up with this? Because it's otherworldly, really.
Yeah, well, thank you for the introduction and also for mentioning the first things about this technology. It's really, in a way, very difficult for people's brains to understand how can this work, right? Because the first thing that people do is just look. There's no plug. You can't plug it into the wall. That's the first question. My first answer is, well, if we had that, if you introduced actual electricity and or magnetism with it, it wouldn't work that way. So it's difficult to understand with the brain, and it's difficult to scientifically explain how it works. But it's very easy to actually scientifically measure, test, and verify the results. So that's what we've been focused on. And so what it is, what you were just holding there, that's the actual technology, because in between those plates that everyone just saw, it creates a very concentrated quantum energy space. So the plates, they're charged in a certain way, and this field in between is so concentrated, pure quantum energy, by the way. There's no brute force used, and there's things possible within that field that are new in a way, because stuff like this hasn't been around for a few decades, so that we're like all familiar with it, like a chocolate cake. Everybody kind of knows what that is. So you can do various things with it. You mentioned one is that you just put an object in it, and within a very, very short time frame, very quickly and simply, that object is quantum physically refined. So you basically imprint pure quantum energy into that object. And if it's an object like a ring, which is a metal, or any other metal, metals are great examples because they hold quantum energy very well. They then transmit that quantum energy afterwards. So you could literally have a golden Rolex as an example, or a golden ring for that matter, and you look at it and you feel it, and then you put it in afterwards, and it's different afterwards. It's finer in vibration, it's higher in vibration. For some people that are not so sensitive, they may say, well, it's more beautiful. So they do have some sense of it. Somehow they feel and can see the difference. But then you can put other objects in there. So if you put water in there, for example, it structures the water. So you then have truly optimized water that goes towards perfect. Absolutely. So it doesn't filter out any bacteria or something like that. So you wouldn't want to take river water directly from the Mississippi and then put it in and then drink it. I would not recommend that, at least. So you take filtered water ideally, but then usually those filtered waters or even bottled waters that you get, or even at home if you use a reverse osmosis filter, you have everything filtered out. There's no life force energy in the water. You get that in with the quantum energy. You can put your hands in there or your foot, for example, and it has really measurable effects on the human body. And from very early on, because it's somewhat of a woo-woo topic, woo-woo just because a lot of people don't yet understand what that means, how it works, and so on. That's why it's a little bit woo-woo. Woo-woo is something that is real, but we don't quite understand it yet, right? Um, we focused on scientific studies very, very early on, and it's actually one of our biggest focus areas to keep doing that. So whether we looked at dark field microscopy, allergy tests, the biowell, heart rate variability, advanced Decavol method testing, all of those and beyond, we've gone through already. And not that we just do that ourselves. It's really, we hand off our products to doctors' practices and to various institutes that are top notch in their field and how they test devices and impact on the human body and biophysiological system. And then they come back and report the results. And across the board, it always works. So things can be repeated, and the results speak for themselves. And yeah, that's pretty much what you can do with it. You can do a few more things, like you can copy frequencies with it, but we don't want to overwhelm the listeners either, because there's really a lot of things you can do with it. But I must say, it's very, very simple to use. It can do so many things, but it's super simple to use. And yeah, I think that's of advantage.
Yeah. And now there was a quote that comes to mind when you were talking, that any technology is indistinguishable from magic that's sufficiently advanced. So I think that's from Arthur C. Clarke. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Yeah, that's what it is. And it's hard to wrap one's head around how this works, why it works, but it works. I definitely feel it. I definitely feel it. So, what would be some of the science behind the studies, if we were to pick like the dark field microscopy work that was done to validate this technology? What would the listener or viewer find by pouring through that data?
Yeah. So, and by the way, if you want to, I'm happy to send you just a couple before and after pictures. Um, uh, after the show, so you can make them available as needed. So, what you typically find with people's blood is that under a dark field microscope, you often see the so-called money rolls. That means that blood cells that are, they look like little circles basically under this dark field microscope, and they are stacked on top of each other often, and that's not a good sign. It's just that with most people that's somewhat the case. And so that means that the blood cells are fairly clogged,
Yeah, they're
which
clumping.
indicates a high. Yeah, exactly, and it's a higher risk for any heart disease, heart attack, stroke, etc. And then you can see a lot of other things, though, also. It may go too far to explain all of it, but that's like a very common and quick to see thing. And then we've done this test, for example, with the quantum block, which is the little brother of the infinity block. And then that person put the hands in there just for 5 minutes. And then the blood was taken again and looked at it. And literally, it was just 5 minutes. And in those 5 minutes, it radically changed. not just like a little bit where you would just have to search for some of the changes and then point those out. No, it's just like so straight in your face that literally everyone, even the people that have no clue what dark field microscopy is, they look at these pictures and they're like, oh my God, this is crazy. This is such a significant physical result and effect. That's astonishing. And yeah, that has been repeated over and over again. So, and we've done all those studies. Now we ran into someone in the U.S. I don't want to mention her name yet because I haven't asked if I can do that. She got interested in our technology, but then she was extremely skeptical. And she's someone that since I think over 30 years has been publishing peer-reviewed studies, and she is all into study design. She's a doctor, and I don't know how many hundreds or thousands even of studies she's designed and managed. And she was skeptical and said, "Yeah, I don't really know if this works. And by looking at these pictures, these look great, but I still don't know." And then I was like, "Okay, so why don't you run a study on your own terms and how you would design a double-blind study, and we'll go with that." And I was here in the U.S. and literally last week I've gotten an email from her, and she was saying, "This is amazing. I need to understand more about this. This is working." In 100% of the cases, this worked and worked significantly. She actually tested that with EMF, and I guess it was 6 minutes this time, 6 or 7 minutes at the most. It was able to completely neutralize it 100%, and in 100% of the cases, all the effects of EMF, which she could also demonstrate on the dark field microscope, and then in many cases actually beyond that even. So so that was great for us because I like to be then in dialogue with people that are skeptic about it. And yeah, so now I guess she's going to be one of our biggest promoters ultimately, and we'll be able to also publish the study hopefully at some point. Yeah, because it does work, and we see it over and over again.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's what people see.
Yeah, amazing. Have you ever tried using Kirlian photography to show before and after? Do you know about Kirlian photography?
Yes, I'm pretty familiar with it actually, and we actually have a very good friend and a neighbor who wrote one of the first books about Kirlian photography, actually several books, and but unfortunately he doesn't have his device anymore. However, there's the so-called Biowell, and so the Biowell does something fairly similar and more, and so we've done Biowell testing as well. So some people may be familiar with the Biowell. It's a registered medical device in Russia and also in Europe. And here in the US, it's not registered because I don't think they want to go through the FDA hoops here. But you can basically via gas discharge photography also see effects on the chakra system, on the aura, on certain organ functions, etc. And we've gotten phenomenal results with that as well.
Oh, very cool. Speaking of the BioWell, is that something that biohackers would want to have as part of their tool set?
Yes, I mean, we actually see a lot of biohackers that have become very interested in our products, as well as doctors, frankly, as well. Those are usually doctors that have a very holistic approach or have a functional medicine practice. We see a lot of those actually. And there's a functional medicine clinic in India actually that is currently running a study with our products because they found out that the Infinity Bloc helps autistic kids. So, and then we heard that from several people, and then they were interested in running a study, which is for us as a small company a great way of performing studies. If we don't have to set it all up, and it's these doctors that have all the experience, and they have the measurement devices and everything and their protocols, and we just facilitate it and help with the products and everything. So that's a big study right now that's going on. There's a chronic Lyme disease study planned in the US. We want to be a little bit careful because the idea is not for us to be a medical device company. We really don't want to be one, frankly, but it just so happens that, you know, wellness and well-being is really one aspect of what these products do. But certainly there's a lot more to it than just that.
Yeah. So, and I know you have to be careful about not making medical claims or even hinting at them, so the FDA doesn't come after you. I'm curious though regarding, you mentioned autism and what promising impacts people were receiving in regards to autism using your technology. What other illnesses or diseases or symptoms have you heard have been impacted by the device? I'm thinking maybe, for example, somebody with a blood cancer might have reported to you that they've gotten some positive results by using the technology.
Yeah, so we have received those testimonials. One interesting one where we actually have real documentation also was when we tested our quantum jacket, which we're actually about to launch. And that was a 68-year-old cancer patient in Austria that went through the blood testing, and he had already been in treatment, also a very holistic treatment, and the blood looked terrible. I'm actually happy to send you those pictures, but it was a very, very, very bad picture. And within, I think that was a 15-minute test, so he was wearing that jacket for 15 minutes, and it was such a significant improvement that the doctor was blown away, and certainly the patient was blown away. And at the same time, then we received a testimonial, and then they wanted to keep the jacket. So yeah, but we've heard similar stories in that regard. Lyme disease is one of those actually, and that's also pretty much the reason why there's going to be this study now, because that's how we work. We get all this feedback, and then suddenly we've heard it from many people. There's actually the wife of a pretty very well-known biohacker here in the US, very well connected with a large following. She has suffered from Lyme disease for quite a long time. And since they've had the quantum block and then the infinity block, that's their words. Their lives have changed to the better because energy level is back, the fatigue is gone, there's more desire to really be in life again and be active and feel this, life flowing through you and not constantly feeling so drained. And there's more to it, but anyway, through multiple of those testimonials that came our way, we were then approached by a couple doctors that also read about those testimonials. Hey, would you be interested in helping with the study? And that's what we're doing. Pain is another thing where, you know of course we need to be mindful about these things, but it's really also the case that I couldn't even say, even if I wanted to, I couldn't even say, well, it'll reduce your pain if you have knee pain or neck pain or whatever it may be, because everybody's so different. And that's one of the things that are so important, that everybody has their own story. Everybody has their own physiological story and state as well. That you can't say that's the case. We have had, dozens of people reporting that they had knee pain for 6 years. They put it in the blog, and already after the first 15 minutes, that pain was gone, and it actually lasted for days. We've had all those, but it's something that is, it does have effects, but does it have in relation to pain always the same effect? No, that's something we can't say. But it is being used for some people. I think a good way to explain it is, and that may be hard to understand, but once you understand it, you understand how it works. So we have this blueprint, right? We have this. It's almost like this blueprint of ourselves. That is um, that's almost, it's like in hyperspace. Now we're going a little bit into woo woo, but that's really what it is. And through the DNA, that actually translate into our physical existence. And a disease or a condition doesn't just happen. It only happens if something on a frequency level is out of balance. That's the only reason. There's no one gets sick from anything if you don't have a resonance within your system in that regard. So that's also why really good healers can see the disease before it actually manifests in the material. So they can tell you, like, you're going to have cancer in 2 weeks if that is not changed, as an example. It's absolutely possible. And to basically strengthen this connection and almost polish the the way to receive through the DNA this blueprint in its ideal form. That's where it helps with. That may be over the top for some people, but it's nevertheless the truth, and that is why it works, because it sort of reminds our own cells on how to be in an optimal state, because in each cell we have a pure quantum energy field. That's also how the cells interact, by the way. So they communicate instantly at all times. There's no lag, really, right? It's pretty much timeless, and that is through this quantum field. So now if you introduce the same source of power, which is exactly the same thing, now you can start to recharge, right? And you can suddenly draw from it, because what happens is with EMF, for example, EMF can suck out quantum energy out of objects, and certainly also deplete living organisms, whether it's plants, animals, or humans. Doesn't really matter. It's all the same thing. So it's about rather reversing that and make that available. It's almost as if you're in the desert and you're drying out of water, and suddenly you're introducing water again so that you can, you know, hydrate. So that's sort of on an energy level. That's the best way I can explain. Maybe in a year I'll be much better at that.
Yeah, well, I took quantum mechanics as one of my classes in university, and it is fascinating but very complicated. And even Einstein saw it as kind of too out there. He referred to quantum entanglement as spooky action at a distance because he just thought it was just nonsensical. But of course, now it's proven scientifically that you can have a particle quantumly entangled with another particle, and they could be galaxies away. In the studies, of course, they weren't galaxies away, but the two particles could interact on each other instantaneously, and yet be separated by infinite distances. And that's pretty mind blowing.
Exactly. And so now the fun thing is that with an infinity block, you can do these tests on your own, and you would test it in a way where you know have a picture of a person, for example, or part of a DNA, which could be, it could be even a fingernail or hair or something like that, and you put it in, and you provide then quantum energy, pure quantum energy, to that person, and that is very, very noticeable, especially with the infinity block. So yeah, it's, and we've not only, not only say this, that this works, we've also had this tested by an institute and verified over and over again. It
Yeah.
does
And
work.
I'm all about the willing suspension of disbelief. Just set your skepticism aside, temporarily at least, and try something new and see what it does for you. If there's no real downside, like there is no downside. I mean, you get a device like this, and see how it affects your life. I mean, either it does something amazing, like all these testimonials say, or it doesn't do anything. Like, okay, if the worst case scenario is it doesn't do anything, I'm out $2,000. But my intuition, my spidey sense was going crazy and saying, get this thing. That was by far the biggest amount of money I dropped in the work or in the conference. Did spend some money on like the DNA company's DNA test and stuff like that. But yeah, you took the majority of what we
But
spent.
so yeah, and so there are indeed, with some people it really is this sort of calling. It's just like you don't know why, but you need to get this. And what that is it's just your inner voice, right? And you had described it initially already as a calling, but that's really the inner voice. And by the way, these products help even to increase that connection and to being able to listen to ourselves again. Now you're in the great position that you already have that connection, and you heard that come through. But in today's world, that's rare. It's rather the opposite, and I think we're getting away from that again. Now it's the time where that shifts. But listening inwards to what really our true self has to say, that is it's become rare because we're so focused on all these things in the outside and watching a movie, then paying the bills, running from one job and appointment to the next. And where's the time to actually listen in? We've unlearned that. We've learned so many other things, but that's what we unlearned. And that's what we try to encourage always, all people, because it's really not just about the physical. Yeah, it's nice if you have a better blood and things like that, but it's really about feeling yourself again and accessing that power and then owning that power, and from there, okay, then everything suddenly becomes possible. And and, and that's what makes us happy, if we see and
Yeah, and
hear
to
these
speak
things.
about this from a scientific perspective, if you look at brainwave patterns, you'll see a lot of beta brainwaves in most people. Knowledge workers banging away on their computers all day long. They're in beta all day long. And when you get into alpha brainwave state, which I was able to work on, have some breakthroughs with by doing the whole week-long program at Dave Asprey's 40 Years of Zen program, where they do the neurofeedback and you're in these pods, and it's intense work. It's really powerful. And getting into alpha means that you are able to get into a flow state, and you could accomplish what would normally take a week in less than a day. It's really powerful. It's not just productive, but it is enlightening to be in that state. It's Stephen Kotler in his book Rise of Superman talks about having these flow state triggers, like your life is on the line, such as uh, somebody who's doing skiing, like heli skiing, and they're dropped down from a helicopter, and they could die if they're not paying very close attention and they're not in a peak state. So they get into flow. They have to be in alpha. Their life depends on it. So this technology allows you to get into that flow state, to be able to tap into that inner knowing, that intuition, that inner voice, your higher self, and accomplish things not just faster and more efficiently, but things that you wouldn't have been able to accomplish any other way. Like you up level. That's at least my experience.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, so that is really the big part of it, and then the physical comes with it, right? Because then the physical also optimizes. And then there's two things that I think are worth mentioning. So if you put this energy field, if you put something inside, so it basically supports everything and allows everything that is life supporting and consciousness supporting or supportive. But it neutralizes everything that's destructive to consciousness or to living organism. And that is also, I don't know if you've seen my presentation at the Biohacking conference, but I think it was about 90 or 100 people there. We had then decided to do a live allergy test on stage so that people can literally see with their own eyes what the difference is. And we had biohacker Todd there, who is pretty well known. He has like a biohacking group with 40,000 people on Facebook, and he's very allergic to honey, to avocado, and to crab meat. And he's found out now over time that he can, if he puts these products into the Bloc for a few minutes to charge them, he can then eat them and tolerate them. And over again, it's always the same thing. But if he doesn't do it, I mean, he's crazy enough to actually test this, right? I mean, who tested this? But he tested it over and over again, and it's each time he doesn't put it in, he's allergic to it. If he puts it in, he can tolerate it. So then I and Mitchell had the idea, well, if that is the case, then this should be the same if you do a real allergy test, right? Where you take a needle and you put some of the crab meat here in the arm. That's what they did live on stage, and it started swelling. It got all red. It was super itchy, and developed really over like a 5-6 minute period to being pretty uncomfortable. The same crab meat they put live on stage in the Infinity Bloc, let it sit for about, I think, 6 minutes, 6.5 minutes, and then took it out, and then he got it in his other arm. No reaction. And isn't that, yeah, it looks like magic, it works like magic, but it's really there. It's physical, it's repeatable, it's scientifically verifiable. Yeah.
You can't argue with the results. And this reminds me of somebody I met a while ago, maybe 10 years ago, and at the time I was really surprised to hear this, that he was allergic to bananas, but by accident he discovered he was not allergic to organic bananas. I'm like, whoa, that is something I'm not going to forget. And I never did. And I never eat non-organic vegetables or fruits.
Yeah.
As long as I have any control over it. If I'm at a restaurant, I can't control if they're not using organic, but I'm going to control what's in my own home, and nothing that we buy as far as fruits and vegetables, and pretty much anything that we can get organic, we will get organic. And this is a whole other adds another layer to it, that I could take a non-organic banana, I could put it in the Infinity Bloc and transmute it into something that is healthier and has fewer toxic elements to it. So that's really cool.
Yes, and you can go beyond that even, so because this energy has real effect on the growth of plants and certainly vegetables. So we actually have a greenhouse. We have it for testing purposes, but certainly we leverage also the yield, right? So it's amazing. We don't know yet, because we're about to start a few studies in that realm to figure out exactly, okay, so what's the additional growth that you get, and what are the additional benefits really that we can scientifically say happen over and over again, and is that the same for each vegetable, or are there any differences? But it looks like we have at least twice as fast and better growth with the Infinity Bloc inside the greenhouse than when you take it away. We literally, and I posted some of that in our Telegram user group, we had 1.3 kilogram zucchini the other day that was just like this big. Um, I had never seen one of those anywhere before, and we get those constantly. And then on one day we had 21 eggplants that we got. It's just an 18-foot greenhouse, and the eggplants also were so large, it's ridiculous, and they taste amazing. We've heard also these as testimonials from people. We had this actually, that's an interesting one. The head of the Besa Institute in Austria, they've been testing a lot of our products, and that's how we've gotten to know them when we sent them their products and asked if they could run a study. And they now purchased our products also because they've seen all those results. They had a vase of flowers there right next to the infinity block. The flowers stayed there for 4 weeks and they were still looking great. I'm not
Hmm.
saying that's always the case, but we have done many different tests actually with the same flowers, two vases. One vase gets the water that was charged and the other one doesn't. And after a few days, you see those basically almost disappear, those flowers. And then the ones with the charged water would stay alive and well for a much longer period of time, 2-3 times longer. Yeah, so we're just trying to play catch up with all these things and try to come up with a scientific study so that we can say, okay, here, this is what you do, and this is what you can get with it. But yeah, plants is a big thing.
Really cool. So
You're introducing life energy. That is what it is. You're increasing the life force energy in those plants.
how do
Um,
you affect a garden that's outside and the plants are already pretty big? Can't fit it inside of the infinity cube, or can't, or infinity block.
yeah, you don't need to put it inside. So the field is so much more concentrated inside, but the infinity block has a 1 kilometer field around it, which is not as concentrated, but it's still there. And within about, I would say, 400 meters, which is 40% of that field, all EMF is neutralized and harmonized. And it also provides benefits to the human cells, for example, not to an extent as if you were to put your hand in there, but it does have some effect, and certainly on the plants as well. So if you have a garden or even a farm, you don't need to put the plants inside. It just is enough that the infinity block is there, and in that set radius, those plants get the benefits.
Yeah, interesting. So one thing I've been noticing as we've been going through this hour on the podcast is with the infinity block right next to me, I've been feeling just really warm. I have the AC on and I'm still like, whew, it's hot in here. And it's not hot outside. It's just I can feel I can feel the infinity block. It's pretty wild.
Yep. Yeah, that is the case. Have you tried to put a picture of yourself in?
I have not, but I did see somebody who had a picture of a loved one in the infinity block at your booth. And she was somebody I sat next to at lunch one of the days of the conference. And she was telling me, like, yeah, this is to send him healing because I don't recall what she said that he has, but it was a pretty serious illness. And yeah, she was sending him positive energy. And I didn't understand at the time what was up with that because I had just walked up to the booth and I'm like, what is going on here? But yeah, please explain for our listener how this works if you put a picture of somebody or yourself inside of the infinity block, or if you have the smaller version, the quantum block. What does that do?
Yeah, so I mean, I think people have heard about the quantum entanglement. We've mentioned that earlier, and that's really what it is. Because in this concentrated quantum energy space, there is nothing like distance um, and time. It doesn't really exist, right? And we kind of know that. We've at least heard that somewhere, that beyond our dimension, that really doesn't exist. It's just like here we notice that, right? There's a distance to go from here to there, and it takes me a certain time from go to here to there, right? So but that doesn't exist. And what you need in order to provide that energy, you need an energetic signature, if you will. So that will be the DNA, or it could be the picture as well, because that's a clear energetic signature of you in that regard. And yeah, it's verifiable and measurable. And so not just that, is that's why I'm suggesting that to you, because if you put a picture of someone else in there, then they may tell you they had great effects, but you can feel that yourself by just testing it for yourself. And I'm pretty certain that you will definitely also feel that. And a good way to do it is, for example, if you do sports or something like that, or if you do yoga, or even if you're in a meditation, you can feel it certainly at any time. But those are some activities where I've found that it's even more noticeable. And so I was even mind blown myself with the effects of it just recently. Again, even though I already knew it worked, I had done it multiple times. I mean, so often. But I played a tennis tournament, and so I'm a national level a senior tennis player. But I hadn't played for like a year or so because of too much that was going on. So then I played this tennis tournament, and my first match, I played just terrible. It was just so awful, and I was like, "Oh my God," I hadn't played for so long. Anyway, then I played doubles because I was also playing with a doubles partner, and it was pretty much the same thing. I just didn't. It just everything felt a little bit off. Probably lack of practice and just the coordination. The rhythm wasn't really there. I didn't feel good. And then I was like, hey, I got this Infinity Bloc in my car. So I had actually, that was a fourth generation. And I put a picture of mine in there on that very same day. I then played my next singles match, and it was 180-degree difference. I felt like I've played my best tennis, and it was fun, and I felt like I had all the rhythm and I had everything to my disposal. And it wasn't for me about winning or losing at all. I am happy to lose if I just have a good time and I feel good playing. And but the same is also true if just nothing works, then you're just not don't feel so good about it. It was such a massive difference. And we will actually also test those further, because there's a study with athletes that we're going to set up due to the whole COVID stuff. Probably it's not going to happen before Q1 of next year, but yeah, that's a big thing. So I encourage everybody to try that.
How long would you put it in the photo into the block for?
It depends. So someone like me that has worked a whole lot with this energy, I can be there all night, for example, even a whole day. That's no problem. For people where that's new, that have never really worked with energy, 5 to 10 minutes would be good in the beginning. You can certainly do more already, but you will feel how it is, and then you can just also increase it over time. It's literally almost as if you put your hands in there. It works very, very similar. It's just some nuances to that, but it's it's noticeable.
What if you put the photo in there
Drink
for too long, or you put your hand in there for too long? What happens, or what could happen?
Yeah. So first of all, that's also important to say. So if you put a picture of someone else in there, for example, right, that person is still completely able to say no to this energy, or to leverage that energy in the way that that person, or rather that soul, wants it, right? So that's really something. So you're not, you would not step over someone's boundaries in that sense. If someone would do like a real energetic work to fix issues or something like that on some other person without asking for permission, that would be really stepping over boundaries. That's something that a true healer would never ever do. But this is like,
Right.
you provide that field, it's available, and but they decide, how much of that they let happen, and they leverage. So that's one important thing to say. The other one is,
Yeah. I just want to mention here how important what you said is in terms of healers asking for permission. It is a very sacred boundary and commitment that they have to not work on somebody who doesn't give their permission in advance. I learned that one from Tina Zion, who's been mentoring me and was a past guest on this episode on this podcast a handful of episodes ago. And yeah, she really drilled that into me. Always ask for permission. You're going to call in the angels, and they're going to do some amazing healing work on somebody. You got to ask first, and you can ask the person by contacting them and IRL in the real world, like in real life, uh, give them a call or send them an email or whatever, or you can ask their soul in a meditation session or meditative state, and get permission that way. Either is acceptable. So not doing that is a no-go area.
yeah, exactly. And so what can happen? So, you can start having detox effects. For example, if it's too much, it may feel that you become very, very thirsty and just need to drink a lot just because so much energy was moved, that you just also need the water to just keep up with it. And that's about it, right? So, I mean, it's, nothing tragic happens just because it's to us, very natural energy, right? It's the most natural energy that there is, and we have it in all our cells. It's just that if it's too much, you can overstimulate the nervous system. You can start detoxing, these types of things. um, and a good meter for that is always our own intuition. And we really tell people, just listen to yourself. So if you test with your own pictures, for example, you'll know when you need to take it out. And hey, if you forget it for 2 or 3 hours in there the first time, then that also happened for a reason, right? So
Right.
yeah, always trust yourself.
Yeah, there's nothing random. I've learned that this year. It's amazing to everything happens for a reason, and everything is connected, and it's just I am still blown away thinking about how this universe works, and I was just clueless. I used to think that you could have private thoughts. That's laughable to me now. There's nothing private that you could ever possibly think, and yeah, it's quite a rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah, but that's part of the wonderful time right now. It's certainly a very challenging time on multiple levels for everyone, probably for some more than for others. But it's really also a wonderful time because as all these things are happening, we're thrown back to figuring out what is our own truth and what's within. And more people are doing that. And what you just said, it sparked this picture, because there's this world that we kind of all know and see, the material world and all that. And I, like you, was there where I didn't think that there's more to it than that, frankly. But once you tap into that and then that world opens up, you realize that that other part is just a tiny one. It's been so dominant for us because that's the way we live and that's how we've grown up. But this other part is huge, and there's the possibilities are endless. And yeah, that more and more humans tap into that now is super exciting. It's very,
Hmm.
very exciting.
It is, and a great way to think about it. I learned this from Kabbalah, studying Kabbalah, is that there's the 1% reality, and then there's the 99%. The 1% is our physical reality, everything we could possibly know about how everything works in terms of the physical sciences and yeah, mathematics and the arts and everything, right? all of that fits into the 1%. And then there's this 99% that we can't possibly fathom or glimpse or grasp at, because it's so much larger than our minds and what we can possibly know or experience in this physical form that we're in. So I really like that way of going through life, like knowing that there's a 99%, knowing I can't really wrap my head around that 99%, but always knowing that there is so much more that I just can't even put my head around yet.
Indeed.
Yeah. Now, I one thing that came to my mind when you were talking a little bit ago about this device and how you can put a photo in there and so forth, is there's a concept I learned about last year. Not a concept. I mean, it's a thing. I mean, it's real. I've experienced it, and I've had people show me the results of it. It's called psychometry, and for those listening who don't know what that is, it's when a psychic holds an object and it boosts the signal essentially so that they can connect with the owner of that object. Let's say it was a loved one who passed away, and this was a piece of jewelry that they always wore. That will help boost the signal, help them connect to that person on the other side of the veil. And if it's an object that you're curious, where did it come from? Who were the owners before? If there was a string of different owners, like what's the history of this thing? That can become known too by through psychometry. And I know it's not what this device does, but there seems to be some sort of relation to what you were describing. If where everything is connected, everything. I mean, we got quantum entanglement and the idea of being able to travel from. Hold on one second. To be able to travel from anywhere to anywhere instantaneously, astral travel and so forth. And I know some of you listening will be rolling your eyes, but there's quantum physics underlying all this stuff so that it is possible that it can actually happen. So I'm curious if you've had any experience with psychometry or other psychic phenomenon, either yourself, you've experienced it firsthand, or you've maybe worked with somebody, gotten a reading from somebody who demonstrated this, and it was without a doubt for you, like the medium who did this, and I learned this concept from Mark Nelson, was a guest on this podcast last year. And for folks who've listened for a while to this show, they know the story that Mark saved a family member's life, one of my family members, during the course of the interview. So, I mean, it's just mind blowing to me that she was having a very serious and immediate issue. She would have died probably if she didn't go to the hospital, and she wasn't going to go because she didn't think it was a big deal until Mark explained what was happening and what would happen if she didn't go.
Yeah.
So this is the guy who saved my family member's life, and then in a reading, which was the first time I'd ever gotten a psychic reading, a few weeks later after the interview, he connected to my mother and shared stuff that he couldn't have possibly known, and shared stuff that even I had forgotten. So that cinched it for me. This is real. This is absolutely real. This is not just fakery or nonsense or whatever. So what's been your experience?
Yeah, I mean, 100% I can confirm that. So, I've worked a whole lot with various healers over time. And in 2005, I met my wife, and she was born with the ability to see aura, and she had never lost this conscious connection, if you will. So she was always aware of the unseen, if you will, and so she could see behind the curtain. And it's up to today. It's, if she talks to someone that's, even at the biohacking conference, we had a few that came up and asked her some questions, random people she'd never seen before, and she could point out, where their problems came from, how they can solve them, what happened that led to that, and all these things. It's just brilliant, and it's absolutely possible. I myself went through various shamanic workshops, and got trained in past life regression work so that I can perform that, and all these things. So I learned some of those things, and it's actually interesting because we tend to think that we can't do that. It's just like these gifted people that can, and that's not true. Everybody can. And yes, there are some that are especially gifted, like we work with Roman Hafner together, which they call the Wunderkind in Europe. He was born with the ability to see all frequencies and energy fields, um, and he had to literally learn how to do the physical seeing, like how you see matter, how we see a microphone, because he would look at a person, and he would see the heartbeat, he would see the heat, the vibrations, the various frequencies. And he learned very
Wow.
quickly that it didn't matter. You didn't have to be in front of him. He could look at someone that's in South America while he's in Switzerland, and still see the same energetic image, and could tell what may be wrong with the heartbeat or something like that. And then he also learned how to fix things, and all of that. And already as an 11-year-old, they put him on stage at a 300 people seminar where he answered questions of people. So, I mean, someone like that is obviously extremely gifted and talented, and has this already built in, right? And so there's just more to explore. We kind of, the people that have, the vast majority that have forgotten how to access that, but they can relearn that. And that's, I think, an important message, because you can do quite a lot of things, and it's not that you can't do it. It's just takes practice. It's, if you want to learn how to play tennis, you need to put effort in. You need to repeat. You need to practice, and all that. And the same thing. It's not that it just comes, and yeah,
Hmm. Yeah.
can all do it.
I love that, and I believe that uh, just to the core of my being. Everybody is psychic. Everybody has this as a gift, as a birthright, to be able to connect with the higher realms, the higher dimensions, the upper sferot, and in Kabbalistic terms, and yet we shut it out because it's uh, not seen as something normal to be able to talk to spirits, to be able to see auras, to be able to um, receive guidance in various psychic ways. Anyway, so when you were talking about this guy who had to essentially learn how to see and normal like the rest of us, that reminded me that Donnie Epstein, who's the founder of Network Spinal Analysis, the Network Chiropractic, which is everywhere around the world, and he was a past guest on this podcast. And he's also a friend of mine. He's an amazing, amazing person. He's a wizard. I mean, he's just an incredible healer, and he had this thing where he could see the energy signatures of people, and he couldn't
Yeah.
tell from a photo of somebody who it was because it didn't look anything like the person as he saw the person with their energy signature. So he had to teach himself over years how to recognize somebody from a photo, which is, yeah, kind of mind blowing.
Indeed.
So a couple quick questions here before we wrap up. One thing you'd mentioned about your device that I thought was interesting and maybe needs a little bit more explanation is you said the device that you had in your car when you were doing the tennis tournament was fourth generation. Does that mean that you had charged your infinity block with another infinity block and then did it again and did it again and did it again 4 times? Is that what that means?
Yeah, basically 3 times,
Okay.
because so if one has the infinity block package, which basically means it's 2 infinity blocks,
Yeah.
you can charge one or the other, and then out of the first generation you create the second, and then with the next charge the third, and then another one would be the fourth. And what that means is, since each time is 7 times more concentrated of an energy field, that's basically what it is. So it's then 7 times more powerful, more concentrated.
So I got the package with the 2 infinity blocks. I haven't charged the one with the other, not yet. I mean, I'm just like, I'm feeling it. Like I need to move this thing away from me because I'm real close to it. It's just like, it's right here, and this is the closest I've been to it for this length of time since I've owned it for the last, I don't know, month. And whew. So I'm definitely not ready to charge it with the other one to 7x its strength. Not yet. But what's the protocol to do that? You just stick the plates in side of the infinity block of the other infinity block and let it kind of cook for 15 minutes or what?
Yeah, you would do it for 35 to 45 minutes pretty much. We have a video on our YouTube channel where that is explained. It's really super simple. It's nothing can go wrong. But it's fairly quick. Yeah, just put the plates inside, ignore the nuts and the rods, and you'll feel when it's ready for you and your household to do it. So
Very cool.
it's not about upgrading fast or something. It's really that's the concept, is that everybody can do it in their own pace, and whenever they feel okay, I'm kind of ready for the next level, then then that's the best time
Yeah.
to do it.
Awesome. And one more question. So copying frequencies. One thing I got, I don't know, my intuition, I guess I'll put it this way, told me not to put multiple pieces of jewelry in to charge at once, to do it one at a time. And, or actually, I think that came to me through an Akashic Records reading, actually. Yeah. So, and I know that that's a good thing to do normally, but there are going to be cases where I would want to copy energy frequencies from one thing to another. So I'd put both in there. How do I
Yep.
copy from one way to the other? Or does it copy both ways? Or like, how is it your intention that then kind of guides it? So, well, I want the energy of this to go into this object, but not the other way around, or it's just all going to get mixed together. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, you could probably do that with intention, but there's also just a regular
Okay.
protocol. And that's really, if you put two objects in there, then they charge both frequencies go into each other basically. So if you take a piece of a frankincense, for example, and a brass capsule, then after that you have also the brass frequency in that piece of frankincense. The way to avoid it is, you could charge the frankincense already in the block for 15, 20 seconds on its own, and then you put it in again for like these 15, 20 seconds with the other object, so it doesn't take anything on. If you were to take a more powerful infinity block, yes, then it would take on the other frequency again, but you can seal it off a little bit. That's what you can do. But other than that, it's brass and aluminum or something like that as frequencies. We wouldn't want to ingest that stuff. But first of all, the frequency itself, everything harmful about it gets neutralized in the block anyway. And so literally there's just this signal of it left. So even if I charged a vitamin C pill on a card, I would still take the vitamin C pill afterwards. So it's nothing bad about it. Yeah, but I think you're doing good that you don't put multiple jewelries in there at the same time if you want to keep their individual characters, and maybe there are different metals too. So I think that's a good thing. I wouldn't also put multiple crystals in there at the same time. Just take a crystal at a time.
Yeah, and I got the intuition that I don't know, I got the sense from above that it would be really good to charge my Andaran crystals or Andara crystals in there individually. I've done that. Yeah, I can feel the difference holding those. It's pretty cool. Yeah, and one last question. So you mentioned you've been trained in all these healing modalities, shamanism, past life regression, and so forth. Do you still practice that? Like, do you do past life regressions for people or shamanic journeys, or is that now in the past since you're fully focused on this business and the technology?
Yeah, I still do that every now and then. Really not much of past life work anymore because there are other ways to do it way quicker in today's world, because what was possible 10 years ago is way more possible now, because you can heal things and fix things way quicker. There's often where you needed an hour and a half session 10 years ago. Now you can do it in 20 minutes or 10 minutes even. So I've evolved as far as that goes. So how I do it is very different to how it was, but I do still do that every now and then. It's just not a big part of my life just because of my other big focus.
Sense.
So
right. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for this was a fascinating and information-packed interview and episode, and I love the device. I'm really grateful for having found it and your company and you, and you're doing really great work in the world and making a difference for people. It's great.
Thanks so much. Yeah, very much appreciated. And it's been great to be on your show. Thanks for the invite. I hope it's been okay with the microphone problem that we've had here, but I still hope it was okay.
Yep, it was great. So thank you, listener, and get out there and do something amazing for your fellow man or woman, and we'll catch you in the next episode of Get Yourself Optimized. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.